Good Monday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock. Time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you had a good weekend. Browns off the bye week, getting ready for the San Francisco 49ers. And some concerning news from out in Berea early at practice. Scott Petrick tweets, Deshaun Watson not on the practice field, working inside, still working through that bruised shoulder. Ethan Posick, Joel Bitonio, David Njoku all also working inside. Myles Garrett back on the field. But if Deshaun Watson is unable to go, that means one of these two guys, that would be Dorian Thompson-Robinson and P.J. Walker, would be the starting quarterback for the Browns against the 49ers Sunday at Cleveland Browns Stadium. Kevin Stefanski obviously asked plenty of questions about Deshaun Watson and where that shoulder is health-wise.
Just part of his rehab, still working through everything. I think with all of our guys, just going to treat all of our injured guys day to day and make sure that we're making smart decisions.
Is it possible he does not play Sunday as he continues to rehab?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into specifics about, Sunday. I know it's a broken record, but really just treat it day by day.
Did he come back from the bye still suffering from like some pain or some lingering issues?
Not going to get into all the specifics, Mary Kay. He's doing everything in his power, working around the clock with rehab. So he's just doing what he's being told to do in terms of his rehab process.
Just on that though, Kevin, if he was cleared to play in that Ravens game, what is he working on if he's medically sound?
Yeah, I think the piece there that's important is medically cleared versus functionally able to do your job. And I think that's what, with all of our guys, when you're working through an injury, you need to be able to functionally perform. And that's what Deshaun's working very hard in his rehab to be able to get back to 100%.
Has he been able to throw better strength?
Yeah, he's working through this process, and he's getting better.
With that, let's welcome in Scott Petrick, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle, Telegram, BrownZone.com. Scott, you're around the team as a beat reporter. Were you surprised just that he wasn't on the field? I know I thought, you get on the bye and you get back and you get after it.
Yeah, I thought there was a chance he wouldn't practice just because we hadn't seen him, do much the week before that Ravens game. But if everything were perfect, then yeah, he'd be out there practicing. So obviously it's not a good sign, right? It's a bad sign he's not practicing. That doesn't mean he won't be out there Wednesday. It doesn't mean he won't play Sunday. But if everything were perfect, if his shoulder felt 100%, he'd be out there throwing in front of us. So I think it is a, red flag.
Is it? And again, it does the Browns no good to downplay the seriousness of the injury. Do you think it was just a little bit more serious than we initially thought?
Yeah, it's interesting, Dave. And we haven't talked to Deshaun Watson since the shoulder became an issue, right? We talked to him, whatever it is, almost 2 weeks ago Wednesday, now the Wednesday before the Ravens game. But it was before practice. Nobody knew that he wasn't going to practice. So he hasn't talked about it except to, tell Mary Kay I'm okay and I expect to play, against the Ravens when he talked for a minute on Friday and he didn't want to do a group interview. So we don't know from him, so we're getting it from Andrew Berry. We're getting it from Kevin Stefanski, seeing what we see, with my own eyes, watching him at practice, watching him try to warm up before the game. I think it was as simple as, okay, it's a bruise. The Browns say there's no separation, no tear in there, no structural damage. So you kind of feel like you're going to get over that bruise pretty quickly. And, Andrew Berry said Watson made progress from the beginning of the week until Friday. That's why they kind of felt like by Sunday he'd be okay. He felt like by Sunday he'd be okay, but the arm just didn't respond. So, each injury is different. Each bruise is different. My expectation, if it really is a bruise, and that's what everybody's saying, that eventually that whatever's in there dissipates, the discomfort, and he'll be able to go back to throwing like he normally does. You just kind of wish that process would speed up if you're the Browns.
So this is kind of interesting. Browns coming off a bye. This is the NFL team tiers, offensive and defensive EPAs per play. Now the x-axis is the offensive EPA per play, so that's across from left to right. Y-axis up and down is the defensive EPA. So the defensive EPA, Browns best in football, without question. Offense, one of the worst. Only the Patriots and the New York Giants are clearly worse. And when you look at the San Francisco 49ers, they're pretty good, both offensive and defensive EPAs. That's who the game is against Sunday. Scott, when you look at this, that graphically shows you they got to figure out a way to fix the offense, and pretty quickly.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Now, I do think, part of those numbers are skewed by the Ravens game where it was Dorian Thompson-Robinson who looked overmatched and they scored 3 points, right? And hardly moved the ball. So, that's one, it's a quarter of the stats, one of 4 games. So, I think it's a little bit skewed, but I agree. I mean, the defense looks like it's going to be consistent, looks like it's going to give the team a chance to win every week. So the offense needs to do its part. And, the number one is getting Deshaun Watson back and healthy. And then I think number 2 is way to run the ball better, and the run game has not been good the last 2 weeks in the win over Tennessee and the loss to Baltimore. Obviously losing Nick Chubb is a huge part of that, but it goes beyond that. It goes to the play calls, it goes to the game planning, the run scheme, and it goes to the 2 running backs, Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt, and then the line. I don't think the line's blocked as well as it needs to, and everybody needs to pitch in to try to make up for the loss of Nick Chubb.
All right, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next segment. I know you wrote an article, I'm curious. Browns at the bye. What's good, what's bad, what needs to be fixed? Take us through that and just kind of where you're at. And you couldn't have I watched the 49ers yesterday, and I've seen them a little bit earlier. I think they are head and shoulders probably. You might talk me into the Dolphins being in that class. Other than that, there isn't anybody close.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because every time they touch the ball, it feels like they're going to score, right? And you can't say that about many teams in this league. But you're right, the Dolphins kind of feel like that. I think the Niners even more than the Dolphins feel that way. I think Kyle Shanahan's probably the best play caller in the league. And they got a bunch of pieces, and their quarterback's playing way better than I thought he ever would. So they got a lot going for him. When it comes to the Browns at the bye, we know that the bad, right? The bad is giving away the game against Pittsburgh, which they should have won. The bad is the Nick Chubb injury, and so many layers of that are bad, right? The way it happened, how he's going to need 2 surgeries, their second surgery. We don't know when he's going to come back. They're saying at some point next season would be the expected recovery, and then what it does to the team. The turnovers, they're turning over way too much, and that's been huge. It was the reason, the number one reason they lost to the Steelers. So those to me are the bad. The good was I thought DeJuan Jones, the rookie right tackles, played well, played better than I expected when he was forced into action against, in the opener against the Bengals when Jack Conklin went down for the season with a torn ACL. You have the defense, which I think has played outside of the second quarter against the Ravens, has played lights out, and there's a bunch of reasons for that. Jim Schwartz, the coordinator, the aggressive attitude he's instilled, the attacking scheme, just how the guys are playing together. You get contributions from a bunch of new guys, Zadarius Smith, Obo Okoronkwo, Maurice Hurst II. And then you're getting, I think one of the big positives from the first 4 games is Myles Garrett, Grant Delpit, and Denzel Ward are playing as well as they ever have. In Delpit, it's a big jump because, he was, I think, just okay in his first couple of years. In Garrett and Ward, we know that they're Pro Bowl type players, and I think they're playing as well as they ever have. So if that continues, then this defense has a chance to be as good as it was in those first 3 games. And then, what we're looking for that need to be fixed, the run game, like I mentioned, the turnovers, they need to stop turning it over so much and then get some takeaways on defense. They only have 3 compared to the 10 turnovers, and get Watson healthy back on the field, right? Like, I think it's a pretty simple formula. You add in Elijah Moore and Marquise Goodwin, the 2 receivers I think that's part of the offense's struggles. They need to figure out a way to better take advantage of their skill sets and get them more involved and get big plays. We haven't seen those explosive plays, which is why they went and got those guys in the offseason in the first place.
All right, before we go to break, 3 players to like on the defensive side of the ball at the bye. This from Dogs by Nature. We've already talked about one of them, Grant Delpit. We'll get to him in a minute. Martin Emerson Jr., second-year cornerback, has been really good, every bit as good as Ward and Newsome. Maurice Hurst, defensive tackle that was brought in. He's been healthy and currently ranked 6th out of 121 qualifying defensive tackles by Pro Football Focus. And then the third one we've already talked quite a bit about, Grant Delpit. And really, Jim Schwartz has unlocked everything you thought he would be. Emerson and Hurst, though, those two guys, and that's in addition to the guys that we already talked about with Garrett and even the edge rushers and Ward. But Hurst and Emerson have been really good.
Yeah, Hurst has been a pleasant surprise. He was a relatively high draft pick, or he's going to be, and then he had some health issues coming out. But hasn't been able to stay healthy. And so far he's been healthy. The Browns are getting a lot out of him. He shows up every week, I don't spend a lot of time, specifically watching the interior of the defensive line, yet I notice him every week. I think that's a credit to him. That defensive line overall, the interior has really been strengthened since last year when it was a big weakness of the team, that interior, defensive tackle. You got Dalvin Tomlinson, you got Maurice Hurst II, you got Shelby Harris, and then Jordan Elliott's a holdover, but they really got a nice rotation there. And then Emerson, he played really well as a rookie. The question was, can you back it up? Year 2, can you do it again? And it certainly feels like he has the right mentality to not rest on his laurels and to build on what he did as a rookie.
Scott Patrick and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, talk a little bit more about the offensive line play. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Scott Patrick from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram as well as brownzone.com. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hello, this is Randall McKissack. My call is about Deshaun Watson and Kevin Stefanski. We need to pump our brakes, simplify the offense, tell Deshaun Watson to quit playing hero ball, take the short, quick, underneath things, keep moving the ball, keep getting the first down. We don't need to keep holding the ball, waiting on these big chunk plays to develop downfield. He's taking too many sacks, and he's exposing the offensive line. We've played 4 games and plus 6 games last year, and it's not working. Those long plays, those big chunk plays will come once we master the underneath. That's my advice to Deshaun. I think we still can go 10-7 and be a wild card and compete for the division, make the playoffs, win a playoff game, and see what happens after that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks, Scott.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Scott, the AFC North is wide open. I mean, we've seen that. So we'll start there, especially after the Steelers beat the Ravens in that. The offense doesn't seem to have changed a lot. Am I missing something?
Well, I mean, I think schematically, systematically, there's more RPOs, there's more shotgun, there's more quarterback runs, there's more option looks, there's more zone read looks. That stuff has changed. Now, has the performance gotten any better? Probably not. Have we seen the results, outside of that Tennessee game? Probably not. I think part of that is Watson. He didn't play that well against the Bengals in tough weather conditions, and he didn't play well at all against the Steelers. So when he played well, when he played well against Tennessee, the offense looked good. But I think the caller's got a really good point. He hangs on the ball too long. And Kevin to me, this is not a Stefanski problem. This is more of a Watson problem. He wants the quick completions, Stefanski does. He wants Watson to get the ball out of his hands. And we saw that against Tennessee. I thought, especially after the beginning stretch, he really got it out of his hands quickly. The protection held up. They, got first downs. They moved the chains. All those things the caller's talking about, and that's what they want. Stefanski wants Watson to take the easy completions. Now, that doesn't mean you abandon any deep balls, but when you do, you go max protection. You got to get the ball out of your hands in a certain clock. Where the Browns struggle is when Watson doesn't throw the easy completion and then hangs onto the ball, and kind of everybody else on offense expected the ball to be out of his hands, and then you get the chance for sacks, you get the chance for holding penalties from the offensive line. So there needs to be a better rhythm, and I put that in Watson's, on Watson, but he did a good job of that against the Titans, so he needs to build off that.
Yeah, and again, that was the last game we saw him play. He didn't play against the Ravens, so this is also kind of interesting. It goes to your point, Brown's offensive line play stats. So when you look at it, Jedrick Wills, 3.3 blown block rate, 0.6 yards before contact created. Joel Bitonio, 2.5 blown block rate, 1.2 yards before contact created. Ethan Posick, 2.8 blown block rate, 1.1 before contact. Wyatt Teller, 0.8% blown block rate, 1.4 yards before contact. And Dwan Jones, 1.8 blown block rate and 3.8, or 3.2 rather, yards created before contact. So it's not just a one area of the offensive line. The guys that have normally performed well aren't really performing the way they had been.
Yeah, I mean, those numbers are pretty in the weeds, right? The block rates and the contact, and I don't know where all those rank, but I know that the offensive line hasn't been good enough, and it hasn't been good enough in the run game the last 2 weeks. It was pretty good against Pittsburgh. Jerome Ford came in and had that big run, but had some nice carries outside of that even. But then against good fronts of the Titans and the Ravens, the offensive line wasn't good enough. And if you talk to the linemen themselves, they blame the one-on-one blocking. They just did not hold up like they should have. And I do think it's across the board. Wyatt Teller, maybe he's, I think he had the best numbers there, but he struggled in pass protection. Dwan Jones, I think he's really struggled in the run game. And maybe that's to be expected from a rookie. Maybe it's to be expected from a guy that big. Although he's got great feet, so I think he should be able to put it all together and really be a mauler in the run game. But we haven't seen that yet. And when you talk to his teammates, you talk to his coaches, that's the area that he needs to be better in the run game. So to me, it's across the board, run game, pass game. The line just hasn't been as good as it should when you think of all the resources devoted to it.
When and I know you wrote an article, kind of getting answers to the run game without Nick Chubb. Do you have to switch the philosophy? Because, and again, this is nothing against Jerome Ford or Kareem Hunt. They're not Nick Chubb.
No, they're not. But what I think, and I think I mentioned it earlier, everybody needs to pull their part. But I think it starts with Kevin Stefanski and line coach Bill Callahan and running back coach, run game coordinator Stump Mitchell and OC Alex Van Pelt, all putting their heads together, which they did over the bye. Say, okay, look, how do we build this run game? Because you're right, it can't be the same as it was with Nick Chubb. It's got to be different. Jerome Ford has a speed element. Not that Nick Chubb wasn't fast, but I think that's what they like about Ford is that he has a speed element. So maybe it's quick pitches to the outside, right? Like, I'm not an expert in the run, designing a run scheme, but these guys are. And I think they have to tweak it to take advantage of what Ford does best, maybe what Kareem Hunt does best when he's in the game. And I think you'll see more of Kareem Hunt as the season goes along, right? He didn't have a preseason, didn't have training camp. Now he's 2 games in, has the bye week. I would expect to see more of him. But I think it starts with, okay, what run plays do we call? When do we call those run plays? What situations in the game? And then it's our line needs to block better, and the backs need to make good decisions and hit the holes.
So this is from Dog Pound Daily. 3 Browns who need to step up after the bye. They go number 3 wide receiver Donovan Peoples-Jones. Number 2, Kareem Hunt, guy we just talked about, and number 1, Jedrick Wills as well. Kareem Hunt is a guy who has had success. The question is, and clearly the Browns think there's something left there because they went out and they signed him. They need a guy that can threaten the defense running the football.
Yeah, and I think it's too early to say Ford doesn't do that, right? Like, the Browns have a lot of high hopes for Ford. He's got speed, he's got strength. Like I mentioned, that run against Pittsburgh shows you what he can do. He's got 4 touchdowns, I think, since he took over the starting role. So he's got potential. But, he is a bit of an unknown. And I think you know what you're getting with Kareem Hunt. He showed up in great shape, according to everybody. I think he could really give this offense a lift if Hunt gets back to being the guy he was in, 2020, 2021, because he plays with energy. He's not easy to bring down. He can catch the ball in the backfield. He can do a lot for you. So I don't know if it's asking too much because, he wasn't quite the same player last year. So now you're asking him to rediscover what he was. But he's not too old. He's not 30 yet. So I think there's a chance there for Hunt. And then it's interesting. DPJ, I know he hasn't had any huge games this season, but to me, the players you need to step up in the receiving core is you need more out of Elijah Moore, and you got to figure out a way to use Marquise Goodwin.
Yeah, and we'll talk about Moore again a little bit after the break. I think you got to find a way to make him effective. To me, it just seems like a waste of his speed to have him running. You're giving the defense a head start to chasing him down, and he's fast.
Yeah, I don't know exactly. You think about it, and I know he has really good speed, right? So, can you run a bunch of go balls with him? Doesn't seem right because he's not the biggest guy, and those are hard to complete to small guys unless there's a ton of separation. They try the bubble screens. They try getting it in his hands quickly, but I think his yards per reception is 8 point something, which is not, super impressive for a receiver. So, maybe it's more of those deep crossing routes, right? Let stuff develop. Let him catch it on the run and see if he can turn a corner and take, a 15-yard completion and turn it into a 65-yard gain. Something like that. Or, the slant where he runs away from everybody. More of that where he catches it on the move to take advantage of that quickness and that speed. Because I think there's a value there. They just have not been able to tap into it to this point.
Scott Petrick and I are going to step aside, take another timeout. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. We'll talk a little bit more about the offense. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrick from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram as well as brownzone.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Alex Van Pelt should be considered as an offensive coordinator. I don't know why he's not, and he is the offensive coordinator, but I'm not sure why he's not calling the plays. Stefanski just should be running the team and allow Alex Van Pelt to call the plays. The one game that he did was against the Steelers in the playoff game in 2020, and we know how that went. So is it a pride issue? Is it a situation? I'm not sure why Stefanski will not give up that opportunity to do that. And he should at least swallow his pride a little bit and just coach the team and allow Alex Van Pelt to coach the offense and call the plays. That's just my opinion. I'd like to hear what you have to say about that. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Scott, Alex Van Pelt's been an assistant since 2006. He's never had play calling responsibility. It was parts of, the one game, which started with the snap over his head, and other than that, he's had, there was another interim where he had play calling. So it's not like he has a body of work as a play caller. And I don't necessarily know that play calling is the issue with Kevin Stefanski.
Yeah, I agree with that, Dave. I mean, I know it's an easy thing to point to, and I get it. But, I don't think Alex Van Pelt would do any better than Kevin Stefanski. I don't think that's been Kevin Stefanski's problem. I don't. I think the play calls are, for the most part, fine. You can nitpick. Certainly, we've seen it inside the red zone, inside the 5, not so much this year, but in the past. You can question a couple of those, trick play kind of things he's run and have lost yardage. But I know when people, when it's too boring, then people complain that there aren't any of those. So, it's hard to win as a play caller. I don't think it's distracting Stefanski from doing what he needs to do in the other areas of his job. And the reason he does it is because he's a really smart offensive mind. And he thinks he's best suited to do it on the team. Now, that doesn't mean there's not a pride factor there, because I'm sure there is. And I know he takes pride in the fact that he does it. I know he likes doing it. He likes to feel like he's got control of that aspect of the game, which is really important. But I don't think that's been the issues in the 2 games they lost.
So one thing that has definitely been the issues, the turnovers, without question, especially the 2 losses. Kevin Stefanski talked about the importance of that earlier today.
I think it's the best stat there is when it comes to winning and losing, because it involves everybody. It's not just an offensive stat. It's an offense, defense, special team stat. So it's so important as you look at these games and you look like I was sitting on the couch watching these games. It's everything when you're talking about giving it away or taking it away. So we need to be better. We're -7 right now, which is not going to get it done. Now we're -7 right now. It matters what we are moving forward. So major emphasis for all 3 sides of the ball. Anybody who touches that rock to do everything in their power to gain yards while maintaining ball security and then getting the ball in defense and special teams. Opportunities for us to get the ball. So major point of emphasis, and then it goes back to just not the point of emphasis, but technique. And that's what we worked on today. Whether, it's center quarterback exchange or a running back running through, getting the ball trying to knock it free, or with our DBs working to knock the ball out. So it goes back to not just the mentality, not just the emphasis, but also technique.
And Scott, think about that. They're almost, they're -7, so you're almost -2. They've only played 4 games, and somehow you're 2-2. That shows you how good the defense has been.
Yeah, it's kind of a minor miracle to be 2-2 with that kind of turnover margin. On offense, it starts with Watson. He's got to be better protecting the ball. Now, they're not all his fault. The pick 6 against the Steelers, not a good throw, but it also goes off Harrison Bryant's hands. The strip sack, scoop and score that cost him the game against the Steelers. Jed Wills gets beat, but, could Watson have held onto the ball? Maybe. You need better ball security. The Njoku has a fumble. I think Ford lost a fumble. So, everybody, it's across the board. You need to do a better job of ball security, of hanging onto the ball, because your defense, for the most part, is not going to let up long drives. What kills you as a team is when you turn it over and give them the ball at the 10, like Dorian Thompson-Robinson did with an interception. Give him the ball at the 36, which he did again against the Ravens. 2 of the 4 Ravens touchdowns were on short fields after interceptions. And that's just hard to sustain like that. It's hard to ask your defense to give up no points or even hold teams to field goals when they're put in those difficult spots. So that starts there. And then on the other side of the ball, I feel they're too talented on defense not to get more takeaways. I think that's an aberration. I think with Myles Garrett getting to the quarterback and Zadarius Smith and all those guys up front, and then the tight coverage of Denzel Ward and Martin Emerson Jr. and Greg Newsome II, I feel like that's the recipe necessary for takeaways. So maybe they, everybody says they come in bunches. Maybe they're going to start, and then you're going to see a pile of them on that side of the ball. It would not surprise me.
So this kind of along those same lines. Offense is second in the league with 10 turnovers. 31 of the 60 points that the Browns have allowed were off of turnovers. So over half of them, the direct result of turnovers. Think about that. If you cut that in half, you're from 60 to 45 points if you cut them in half.
Right. I mean, think about how bad the offense was against the Ravens, right? And I think I told you last week, it gave them no chance to win the game the way DTR played. Having said that, if you don't give the Ravens 2 short fields, maybe it's 14-3 and the game's not over. And if you get one, fumble from Lamar Jackson, it changes the game, right? Like, so that's a huge stat. It just tells you how important it is for the offense not to turn it over, right? Like, I think the way the defense is capable of playing, and, we're talking before the Niners game, and the Niners could mess it all up because they're so good on both sides of the ball. But, like, let's go over the whole season. If the defense plays like it has, the offense just doesn't need to make mistakes and, like, make a handful of plays. And I think they'll be in every game because I think the defense has that kind of potential.
All right, before we go to break, this is from Dog Pound Daily. Browns' 3 biggest surprises after 4 weeks. Number 1, Elijah Moore, a disappointment with a question mark. Number 2, best defense in the entire NFL. And number 3, the emergence of Ogo Okenrankwo. Scott, we talked a little bit about Moore. I don't think you can label him a disappointment so far, first 4 weeks have not been what you expected, but I think to say he's a disappointment, they got to figure out how to use him. He has the skill set that they need.
Yeah, it's too soon to label him a disappointment. Against the Titans, he had 9 catches. I know for only 49 yards, but he was a part of, pretty big part of the offense that day. They're trying to figure it out. If this continued all year, then yeah, it's a disappointment. I don't know if it's so much him as a disappointment or just all of it, right? How they're using him, whatever is a disappointment. But it's not like they mortgaged the future for Elijah Moore either, right? I think part of the frustration from fans is there was such hype about him in the offseason and the preseason. And, I was part of that because I'm watching him do all kinds of stuff in training camp. He's used in a bunch of different ways. I know the Browns are thinking he's going to have a major impact, and it hasn't been there. So there's a lot of hype, hasn't lived up to it, but I think it's too early to get too down on him or even how they're using him, right? It's still early. That feels like something that they might have figured out coming out of the bye week.
And then the other 2, the best defense in the NFL, we'll see. They're certainly one of the elite defenses. And Okenrankwo, I think they expected him to emerge just by the sheer volume of opportunity they're going to give him.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. The contract they gave him, right? For a while, we thought he was going to be the starter. When they signed him, they thought he was going to be the starter, and then Zadarius Smith became available in that trade, and all of a sudden, Obo becomes the number 3. But he's playing at a high level. He shows up. It's kind of like Maurice Hurst. He shows up every week. He's in on sacks every week, and it's just part of that, big-time defense is the depth that they have along that front four.
Scott Petrak from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram and BrownZone.com. And I'm going to step aside, take one more time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, and we'll also hear from Kevin Stefanski about the 49ers. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrak from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram as well as BrownZone.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Andrew Berry's done a great job of at least putting the pieces in place to put up a winning organization. He's addressed the defensive line. He's addressed, different parts of the organization, wide receiver, kicker, what have you. And I feel that if anything were to change after this year, it probably would be Kevin Stefanski, just because of the fact that the play calling doesn't seem to be relaying the wins that, on offense at least, that we need to have. I think they should definitely never get rid of Andrew Berry, or at least not for the time being, because he's done his job. I just think it's not being followed through with the coaching staff.
Scott, that's a tricky thing. You can point to the draft. You can point to, right now, the decision to trade Joshua Dobbs is kind of a, that was one that I didn't think matched all of the other moves where you were in win now mode.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up because that is right now looks like a mark against Andrew Berry, right? When you look at his whole resume, that Joshua Dobbs trade. It's interesting, a lot of time to play out before any of those kind of decisions are made. Who stays, who goes, if anybody goes. But I could see that, what the caller's talking about. Could Andrew Berry stay and Kevin Stefanski go at some point? Yeah, that's entirely possible. And it's just interesting how you look at it, right? We just had that Elijah Moore discussion. Okay, well, it sounds like the caller is pinning that on Kevin Stefanski. Okay, well, Andrew Berry was the guy that went and got him, right? So maybe he doesn't have the requisite skill set to be a every down contributor in this league. We don't know that yet. I've defended Jed Wills a bunch, but a lot of people criticize him. Andrew Berry spent the number 10 pick in the draft on Jedrick Wills Jr., right? And you can do that with every roster transaction. So, I do think the roster's plenty talented to win games. I think the coaching staff's good enough to win games. So it does feel like all the parts are here. And if it goes sideways, then, yeah, somebody's going to take the fall. And it would be interesting to see how that plays out.
So Sione Takitaki, Kevin Stefanski talked about getting ready for the 49ers and what they have seen from San Francisco.
Yeah, obviously played really well last night. Have been playing very, very good football on all three sides of the ball. We had really one eye on them last week in our bye week work, and then we'll really dive into them starting today.
Really, really good team. Obviously, they're 5-0. They put some great things on tape as an offense. A lot of guys that could do a lot of things personnel-wise. So really good, explosive team. I feel like Brock Purdy does a great job with the ball, and they got a great running back, some pass catchers, Kittle, good O-line, and so it's going to be. I'm excited for the opportunity to go against a great team, and we're excited.
And Scott, take a look at this. This is the 49ers offense, and it's just varied. You got so many guys to worry about. Week 1, Brandon Ayuk, 129 yards, 2 touchdowns. Week 2, Christian McCaffrey, 137 yards and a touchdown. Week 3, Deebo Samuel, 129 yards and a touchdown. Week 4, back to McCaffrey, 177 yards. Then Week 5, George Kittle yesterday, 67 yards and 3 touchdowns. The other thing, McCaffrey has scored, I think it's something like 14 straight games he's scored a touchdown in. He can set an NFL record if he scores a touchdown against the Browns. This defense is going to, if they find a way to keep this offense in line, they're going to start getting some major, major national attention because this offense of San Francisco has been darn near unstoppable.
Oh, there's no doubt. And, on that list doesn't include Brock Purdy playing out of his mind. Now he's the favorite to win the MVP, which, I don't think you ever would have. I know you wouldn't have said a year ago when he was the last pick in the draft, and certainly wouldn't have said it week 1 this year, coming off he had an right arm injury, and he's able to be ready to go week 1. He's been incredible. It looks like he just makes nothing but good decisions, has really good accuracy. They got a great play caller in Kyle Shanahan. So, yeah, to me, if you look at that, the Browns secondary gives them a chance, right? Maybe they can cover man-to-man against Ayuk and against Deebo and maybe even against Kittle. You got to figure out what to do against McCaffrey because I don't know, I don't think you can trust one guy to stop him. So that gets hard. Can you zone up against him or double team him? I don't know. It feels like the best way to handle that offense or try is by just getting a ton of pressure, right? Because nobody likes that. Quarterbacks don't like it. If you don't have time back there, you can't make your reads, you can't make your throws. So I think the Browns defense needs a big game from Myles Garrett and company to try to slow down that 49ers offense.
Yeah, and think about this. So they traded a bunch of first-round picks to go up and draft Trey Lance with the 3rd pick overall, and he got beat out by Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy. So they ended up trading him. They made one of the worst trades, and nobody's going to talk about it because they came back and with the 7th, the last pick in the draft, they got their quarterback.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? And most teams, that's the kind of Lance trade is the one that would sink them, right? Could sink them for 5 years or 8 years or however long it's going to be. But if you find the guy, that's the key. You got to find that guy somewhere, and they found him in the 7th round. Now, I know that it helps Purdy to be around, to have all that talent around him, and to have Kyle Shanahan as his coach and calling those plays and designing that scheme because he's got guys running open. So I think it'd be harder if you were with another offense, another team. Having said that, not every quarterback can handle that, right? Johnny was in Stefanski's or Shanahan's offense and didn't make it work. Garoppolo turned it over too much in Shanahan's offense, and obviously Lance was hurt, but even then, Shanahan didn't trust him. So Brock Purdy deserves a ton of credit, and the 49ers did get kind of lucky, right? Sure, they took him, but they passed on him a bunch of times, and all of a sudden the guy is, looks like he's going to be the quarterback for a while there.
All right, before I let you go, what are some of the changes you expect to see for the offense coming out of this bye week? Again, no Nick Chubb. Jack Conklin's not going to be there, assuming Deshaun Watson is back and able to play at the level, he's going to play at. What do you expect to see?
Yeah, I mean, we touched on, some of it. I think you'll see kind of a tighter run game. Maybe, I don't know what the number is, 5, 7, 10 plays that they go to a lot and say, okay, these are our bread and butter. Let's see if we can attack defenses with this group of plays. We talked about Elijah Moore a ton. I think he's going to see tweaked how they use him, how they think they can get him the ball in space. And then Marquise Goodwin. We saw those 2 plays against the Bengals where he got behind the defense and Watson missed him. And part of that was the weather. A big part of it was the weather. But we really haven't seen Goodwin running free since then. He's not playing a bunch. He's playing a handful of snaps. He's got 1 catch for no yards. I think they need to add that deep element, and he gives them the best chance. So I think maybe see a little more Marquise Goodwin and a couple of kind of targeted shots, right? Maybe a shot a quarter that they say, hey, we're going to try to go deep, whether it's to Goodwin or Moore or, Amari Cooper can get behind the defense. Something that stretches the defense to create some of that space underneath for a guy like Moore or a guy like Kareem Hunt out of the backfield.
Do you think they try to spread it out more, or is that just not in this offense's scheme?
Well, I mean, they're using a ton of 3 wides, and when they go hurry up or, 2 minute drill, they go a lot of 4 wides sometimes. So, I just don't know how much more they can do of that, I think they like David Njoku on the field. I know they do. So then you can only go 3 wides, right? So I think we've kind of seen the structure, but it's what they do inside of that structure.
Scott Petrak, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Scott.
Thanks, Dave.
Scott Petrak, make sure you check him out, brownzone.com on the internet. He is also the Elyria Chronicle Telegram's Browns beat reporter. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dogs podcast straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports for CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
This is Jim from Rochester. I thought maybe there'd be a move in one direction. Hasn't happened. I'm beginning to think that Mr. Stefanski could care less about the Cleveland Browns or the city of Cleveland. Otherwise, he would have at least hired a new offensive coordinator to head in another direction. I do not think he has the skills to be a head coach. He's arrogant, and all he cares about is running that rinky-dink offense that goes absolutely nowhere. He needs to finally say to himself, let me hire an offensive coordinator, and I will try to be the head coach. I don't even believe he can do that. Okay, have a great weekend. See you guys.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Tyler, the reason Kevin Stefanski got the head coaching job is because of his ability to design an offense. I don't see him hiring an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, when you brought Alex Van Pelt here with Kevin Stefanski, the one thing Alex Van Pelt was known for is being a quarterback coach. That's why, I mean, Aaron Rodgers had one of his best years with Alex Van Pelt as quarterback coach. Baker Mayfield had a really good year with Alex Van Pelt being heavily involved in as his quarterback coach before Drew Petzing took over and took that job. But if you look at Kevin Stefanski, I mean, he still has a winning record as Browns head coach, and I know you can base a lot of that off of just 2020. But when's the last time we were at least able to say that? Kevin Stefanski is seriously a really good offensive mind, and I know a lot of people question that, but the reality is if fans would have NFL Plus and watch the old 22 where you can see the game from a different level, there are many times that whether there's a hole open for the running back to run through, or let's say Deshaun Watson misses a pass that was wide open. There are a lot of things that schematically are open and players are not executing. Now, against the Ravens, you could argue that Stefanski could have made that game easier on DTR, but again, game script had a lot to do with that. So that's pretty harsh to say about Kevin Stefanski. I think given all the circumstances he's dealt with in his 4 years as head coach, he's actually done a pretty admirable job. Now, again, the expectations for him, I mean, were pretty low just given the Browns' history with head coaches since coming back in 1999. But at the same time, I think Kevin Stefanski has done a really good job of just stabilizing the ship of the Cleveland Browns and making them, him and Andrew Berry have made this franchise really relevant again and really turned them into a contender here in the last couple of years. So, and I think Stefanski deserves credit for being a part of that. A lot of criticism there, but at the same time, there's a lot that he's done for this organization that has really benefited the Browns.
Yeah, and again, you got to find a way to make the offense work without Nick Chubb and assuming Deshaun Watson is healthy with Deshaun Watson. We haven't seen that other than in the Titans game. All right, this is from Dog Pound Daily. 3 Browns that need less time on the field after the bye. Number 3, they say Jordan Elliott. Number 2, Jerome Ford. And number 1, Jedrick Wills. Elliott's been fine. He's a rotational piece. There have been a couple of times that he's flashed. He's not, Maurice Hurst has played better. Shelby Harris has played better. But Jim Schwartz plans on playing 7, 8, 9 defensive linemen. Jordan Elliott's just fine. Ford is a little concerning. I know he's had a couple of big plays. If you take those big plays out, it's been very average. And I know you can't say, well, you take the big plays away, but it's concerning that he's averaging 2.8 yards. If you take the one big run out, I think he's averaging under 3 yards a carry. That's concerning.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When I see the Jerome Ford stats are really alarming to me because like you said, you take away those big plays, he looks very underwhelming. And even like the game against the Titans, I know that he had 2 touchdowns in that game, and it's really hard. We're really going to criticize him from scoring 2 touchdowns. It was great that he did that. But outside of that, he averaged 1.8 yards a carry. And it seems like since Nick Chubb got hurt, this offensive line as a whole has really just underperformed. And you have to wonder if Nick Chubb was masking a lot of those issues in the run game. Because the Browns' offensive line's been a lot better pass blocking than they have run blocking this year. But then you talk about Jordan Elliott. I was one of those people that in the preseason move on from Jordan Elliott. I thought it would try and trade him. I thought it was always the best move. But I have to admit, this year as a rotational guy with Maurice Hurst, but also having, of course, Dalvin Tomlinson, Shelby Harris, he's been a solid rotational piece for the Browns. And I don't know what his future is outside of this year, but Jordan Elliott, keep giving him around the same amount of snaps per game. Right now, I have no problem with it. He's been performing pretty decent given that opportunity. I would like to see more Maurice Hurst, but at the same time, Dave, you got to be careful with Hurst because he does have an injury history, and that's been his biggest Achilles heel as an NFL player is being able to stay healthy. And if the Browns can keep giving Hurst 20 snaps a game and he continues to be as effective as he is, I'd rather do that as opposed to increasing his snaps and then the potential that higher chance that he ends up getting injured. So I'm okay with Jordan Elliott getting the snaps that he is.
And I think we've talked before, Jedrick Wills just has to be better. At left, he just has to be better. I mean, I don't want to beat the guy up. He's got to be better. Kevin Stefanski talked about Jerome Ford and that run game earlier today.
He's had some really good moments thus far in the season. Obviously, we want to get back to being more efficient and explosive in our run game, so he's a big part of that. He has breakaway speed, I think, is one of the things that we've seen from him. He's a guy that has the ability to run in between the tackles, but he does have a legit breakaway speed. So he's a guy that continues to work hard.
Now, when you looked at the run game, especially the last 2 weeks, as it said, we can improve in these areas.
Yeah, it's multifaceted. I mean, it's play design, play call. Sometimes it's execution. It's all of it. We have to get back to being way more efficient.
So I guess here's the question, Tyler. What should the identity of this offense be, minus Nick Chubb, with Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt at running back and Deshaun Watson, a healthy Deshaun Watson at quarterback?
I think what the Browns need to do, assuming Deshaun Watson is healthy, the offense is going to have to go through Deshaun Watson. It's going to have to be a pass game that opens up the run game, because right now they're trying still to lean very hard on that run game. And listen, I get it. I mean, it's been a staple that the Browns have had ever since Stefanski's gotten here, especially with Nick Chubb being your running back. It's understandable why that's been the case. Things are different now. Deshaun Watson's your franchise quarterback. Obviously, he was injured against the Ravens, but if he is healthy, this offense needs to go through Watson. It needs to be a pass first. It needs to open up the run game, because if you're opening up the run game off the pass, it's going to benefit everybody involved, Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt. And I think Watson can do that. We saw him do that in Houston. I think he can do that here. We haven't seen it, of course, a lot outside of really the Tennessee game. But now there's no safety blanket anymore. Nick Chubb is gone, and it's still painful saying that. But you have to let Watson's arm be what carries this team. You're paying him the money to do that. I believe he can do that. We, of course, need him to get healthy in order to do that. But at the same time, do what you did against Tennessee, and I think that's slowly going to start opening up this offense more, because I think defenses have still been keen on the run more, just because Deshaun Watson has not been the guy that so far that we saw in Houston. But I think the more that we start to see that happen this year and become the quarterback that we know he is, defenses are going to have to change the way they game plan to play the Browns, and that's going to only open up the run game more. Jerome Ford's going to get more opportunities, Kareem Hunt, and I think it's only going to benefit everyone long term. And Dave, I've said this before, I really think coming off the bye, I would like to see Pierre Strong get some more looks in this Browns offense. Now, when you look at his stats, majority of his carries have been in garbage time, but I think he brings a speed element to this offense that they really need to try and use, get him out into space, but even put him in the run game more, add that different look that the defense has to prepare for. So not only Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt, I want to see Pierre Strong get a little more involved here coming out of the bye week.
Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dogs podcast and Network 216 and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. We'll hear from Kevin Stefanski, talk about some underrated players. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dogs podcast and Network 216. Kevin Stefanski talked about the self-scouting the Browns did during the bye week.
4-game sample size and then some circumstance with a weather game and those type of things. So you're trying to look at all of it and parse out, some individual things that we can do better with players, some schematic things. But there's so much football left to play. So you really have to be careful not to overlook, spend too much time looking at 4 games. As we know, every week's a challenge. Every week's a different challenge. Certainly this week, a very, very good football team coming to our place. So try and focus on the things that we do well and that you have to do well in terms of trying to beat a good team.
Yeah, and Tyler, I think you need to see less under center and more shotgun. Again, nothing against Jerome Ford or Kareem Hunt. They don't scare me with play action the way Nick Chubb and Nick Chubb does.
No, yeah, absolutely. This needs to be a shotgun-based offense, running through Deshaun Watson, and let the run game play off of that. And I think too, something I want to see out of the bye. I love Elijah Moore. I have said that all offseason. I still love the acquisition. I think what we need to do is use him more, and we saw it against Tennessee. We saw it a lot more against Tennessee. Get him more involved in the pass game because he's creating elite separation right now, if you see it graphically right now. He is one of the best in the NFL separators, and he's shown it again this year. We need to get him the ball more outside of trying to use him on jet sweeps and handoffs. The reality is he's just not Deebo Samuel. The guy that does that better than anyone is coming to Cleveland as a member of the 49ers on Sunday. Deebo Samuel's the best in the NFL at that. And I think what Stefanski's been trying to do a little bit too much is treating Elijah Moore like he is Deebo Samuel. The reality is there is not another Deebo Samuel in the NFL. It is only Deebo Samuel. And Elijah Moore doesn't have the body type for that type of work. But at the same time, I don't mind using him out of the backfield. But I think if you're going to do that, use him out of the backfield in the pass game, not really necessarily giving him handoffs. Now, if you want to give him a jet sweep from time to time, I'm all for that. But I also think that's where you get Marquise Goodwin involved some more. Give him a jet sweep from time to time. That's what they were trying to do with Anthony Schwartz when he was here, to use that speed. Take advantage of Marquise Goodwin's speed. Use him in some jet sweeps. Get him a little bit more involved because so far, outside of a couple deep balls, we haven't seen much of Marquise Goodwin this year, and I think you need that speed component on offense too. So not only Elijah Moore, I need to see Marquise Goodwin get a little bit more involved with this offense.
Yeah, and with Moore, they lay off him, they give him a cushion. So those are easy yards if he's on the line of scrimmage. If you have him in the backfield, it's almost like you're neutralizing his speed a little bit, I think. All right, before I let you go, this was a tweet that you had. Broncos lost to the Jets yesterday, so they fell to 1-4. You kind of got to believe that Jerry Jeudy, Garrett Bowles could be available as the trade deadline approaches, which is, I believe it's the 31st. It's Halloween. So it'll be interesting to see. Of the two, I kind of like the left tackle. Garrett Bowles, he's not a world beater by any stretch of the imagination, but I think he would be an upgrade over what we're getting.
No, absolutely. And I put Jerry Jeudy on that only because I know that in the past the Browns have expressed interest in him. I don't know if they're going to go back down that route unless Denver has really taken down that asking price for Jeudy. But Garrett Bowles just makes too much sense, Dave. I mean, if you look at on Pro Football Focus, they list out, you can see all the blocking grades for pass and run for all the offensive tackles in the league. And you're talking left and right tackle. Garrett Bowles is 17th in the entire NFL overall. Jedrick Wills is 63rd. That is a very that's a very there's a huge difference there. And Garrett Bowles also, if you look at the money, you would have to find someone that would take Jed Wills. And I know a lot of fans have questioned me on that. Why would anyone want Jed Wills? Well, he does have a 5th-year option on a rookie contract, and maybe a team decides to move him back to right tackle, which is what he played at Alabama. So he's still a rookie. Someone would absolutely take Jed Wills. I firmly believe that. And Garrett Bowles only is under contract until 2024. So you would have him under for 2024 if you choose, because he also doesn't have any guaranteed salary for 2024 either. So I think that would be a great move for the Browns. And given the Broncos situation, they might want to get that money just completely off the books. And if that's the case, you can get him for a day 3 pick. I think the most it would cost is a 4th-round pick. So keep an eye on what happens in Denver the next couple weeks, because I think they really are going to start clearing house there soon.
Tyler Johnson, Faithful Dogs Podcast Network 216, as always. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks, Tyler.
Thank you so much, Dave. Really appreciate it.
Tyler Johnson, make sure you check him out. Faithful Dogs Podcast as well as Network 216. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.